down? Are they gonna bail you out or just run you around? They said you should have a house the American way.
Well, hi folks, this is Jack Spirko with the Survival Podcast. Welcome to an episode of Friday Flashbacks. After 15 years and hundreds of interview shows, we decided to run them as flashbacks every Friday. Beginning with the oldest of them and going forward. There's a tremendous library of wisdom in all the great interviews we've done over the years, so sit back and enjoy. Whether this is your first time or even your second time around with today's episode, I'm sure you will enjoy it and learn a lot from it. And remember, you can help support the Survival Podcast and the work we do just by becoming a member of the Survival Podcast Members Support Brigade. If you do that, you'll get access to over 70 awesome discount codes on products and services you likely already use. Things like seeds, cannabis products, food storage items, custom roasted coffee, and even cool stuff like ammo and moonshine stills and more. So support the show, get all your money back and more. Just go to thesurvivalpodcast.com and click on members to learn more and sign up. Now let's get into today's Friday Flashback. And today we're flashing back to what was originally episode 803, first published on December the 14th, 2011. This was an interview with Jeff, the Berkey Guy Gleason. Jeff's been a supporter of the show since 2009, about as early as you could become a sponsor. There's been some time in the middle where he wasn't an official sponsor, but he supported the show one way or another ever since. So we're looking at a decade and a half. He's a great guy, and when it comes to water, he knows his stuff because he is the Berkey Guy. With that, let's go ahead and flash back to December of 2011. And with that, we've got the housekeeping wrapped up. And I'm really happy to bring on a longtime supporter of the show, not the first sponsor or anything like that, but a sponsor that's been with us a very long time, a guy that's always taking care of you guys, the audience, and a guy with a really great product and some insight into the industry that, we wouldn't get because he sees the ebbs and flows as people panic, and all of a sudden everybody's got to have something, and then all of a sudden nobody's worried about it again, stuff like that. And he's here with us today. His name is Jeff Gleason, a.k.a. the Berkey Guy. Hey, Jeff, welcome to the Survival Podcast.
Hey, great to be on your show, man. It's been great knowing you for these 2.5 years or so, at least. I think it's been 2.5 years.
Close. I think it's probably crossed 3 by now, but who's counting?
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, it's been a while. The TSP. We're coming up on our 4th year this summer. It's
oh my god,
kind of crazy, really, when you think about that.
I think you were on, not to butt in, you were on, I think. Episode 300 when I first met you, 250 maybe.
Yeah,
that's
about right.
What I remember.
And you are now on episode 803.
Jeez. Wow, that is. Wow. No, and I appreciate. I think one of the things that I really like, and maybe obviously you got to go back to the 200th episode in that area, but some of the business episodes that you did, I think even for the entrepreneur, that's just starting out. A lot of the information you had on there, these little tidbits you had at the beginning when I first started listening to you, right around the time we became sponsors, that I was able to get some little tidbits from you in relation to whatever it was SEO or just online business or just, I think your passion towards telling people to do it at 1 a.m, and I wasn't necessarily doing it at 1 a.m, but those things never left me. When you're like you go to work all day and then at night you push it. You hit what you want to do and you build that, and it's powerful. So I appreciate it.
Well, cool, man. I appreciate all the support you've given the show as a sponsor. I appreciate all the awesome feedback I get on you, where people are getting Berkeys from you and all, but. What I really wanted to kind of talk to you today about is kind of, water in general, the need for filtration in general. I think it goes without saying, if you ask me what to buy, I'm going to say a Berkey. It's what I own personally. I purchased mine from you, but I think a lot of people are at kind of like, don't even really understand the need for water filtration kind of in their daily life. Like they think, well, the water comes out of the faucet, I drink it, I don't die. What do I need a filter for? So you have some thoughts just on like the daily value of good water filtration?
Oh, no, great question. In our lives, there's always that one thing in survival preparation that always has to do with, you can live only about 3 days without water. And so even if you live in the suburbs or even if you live in an apartment, most of the water coming out of your tap is going to be filtered partially at a plant or water treatment facility, and then it's going to be chlorinated heavily, most likely, or chloramine, chlorine, treated in some way with chemicals, and then possibly fluoridated. And so, and that process in and of itself is some people, in my opinion, is that, like, I appreciate somewhat, you're like, okay, I appreciate that it's not coming in my tap with E. coli, Giardia, or contaminants, but chlorine, is something that in large amounts or taking in every day is not necessarily healthy, and so that's why obviously water purification or filtration is important, even though I'm glad, obviously, when it comes to the pipe, it's not going to get me sick or give me dysentery or anything like that. And so, I'm appreciative of that, but when we have water coming out of our tap, it's not necessarily healthy for us, or even, other sources of water, not just your tap, but a well. I speak to a lot of people who have well water, and it's not necessarily, purified right from the source. You've either got high mineral content, you might even have high arsenic content, other contaminants like E. coli or Giardia or bacteria could be in that water, and it ultimately needs to be, purified. You can get water also from a river, a lake, a stream, you're camping, fishing, wherever you're getting your source from. You need to think about purification. I remember I was playing, side issue, but playing the game just the other day, the newer version of it, but Oregon Trail, and how important, vitally, water is. I know that a lot of us nowadays, we don't live in that kind of situation that's going back, to the 1800s, but I think with the way people are thinking now, they don't, they're seeing a change and a rift in the way that people are saying, I'm going to go more off-grid now. I'm going to live how they, not necessarily exactly how they lived back then, but how essential water is, and to get it for myself, especially with well water, with pumping their own. And so, my whole thing is that no matter what your source of water, make sure it's being purified. You have all these different sources, and maybe if you don't have a well, I encourage you to go out and to start your own. I personally don't have a well, but I know that it's important for people to have, and I know that a lot of people that I talk to are going down that route. So, those I would say, Jack, would be a few sources of water that people can obtain. And
let me add to that on the well thing, Jeff. Like in Pennsylvania, I had a well, and we had the water tested, and it was actually great water. We didn't have any problem with any kind of agricultural contamination. We didn't have any excessive levels of anything. Now, I say that, knowing what I know now, I might have took a little bit closer look at some of the levels they called safe of certain things, but in general, it was safe to drink water. But it didn't taste good. It had a fairly high sulfur content, not enough to be dangerous, but enough to put the taste and the flavor slightly off. So using a filter made the water actually taste better, which then we drank more. So then we were better hydrated. So then even if it's not like a direct health improvement, if water tastes better, you drink more, and that's a health improvement. I think we can drink too much water, but you really have to kind of be dumb to drink enough water for it to be too much. But lots of us walk around kind of dehydrated on a daily basis, especially if we're heavy into sugar and caffeine and nightly libations of adult beverages. You put those three together with minimal water drinking, and you end up in a semi-dehydrated state all the time.
Yeah, and it's just about. I think with water, it's one of the most underrated things in preparation. Not just saying for you that you don't. I think just in general that it's not talked about enough. Really, the essential. I'm not saying you don't talk about it enough, Jack. I'm just saying, thinking the whole market in what's going on in survival. It is so vital and so important. People have their food preps, and they have their bug out bag, and they've got all these things, but they have their supply of water, is low, and that could compromise their prep, and so I I cannot stress that enough.
I think you're right. I think a lot of people just say, well, just go get a filter and hopefully it's a Berkey or whatever, but a good quality filter of some sort. Okay, and then your problem's over. Well, not necessarily, because where are you going to get the water from? You know, and I think that's a big hole in people's press as well. But before we move forward, I wanted to talk a little bit about the water that comes out of our sinks, because there's certain things in there that like are put in there that bug me. And the one that bugs me, but I understand, is chlorine. I don't want it there when I drink it, but I understand the role that it plays, and I understand the function that it plays, and I'm happy, you know, I don't have that issue anymore now that I'm off-grid with my water, but when I was happy to be responsible for removing my own chlorine. No problem whatsoever, because I understand why it's there. But the other one is fluoride. And the more I learn about fluoride in our water, the more I look at it and go, I don't see any potential gain really at all. Fluoride maybe can help remineralize our teeth and maybe belongs in toothpaste, but in my water, I liken it to, okay, I don't want to burn today when I go out in the sun, so I'm going to drink some copper tone. It doesn't work that way, right? You put the lotion on the skin, not in your body, and then hope that it'll come back through or some weird thing. And with your system in particular, if I want fluoride out, there's a second set of filters I have to buy. Can you kind of talk about just your thoughts on fluoride in general and why that need for that second set of filters?
Yeah, and really, it's, you know, you bring up a great point about it. You know, you wouldn't drink things. You know, the whole logic of water fluoridation is just unbelievable. You know, putting aside the teeth, putting it on your teeth, injecting it, or even I remember a dentist or whatever telling me once that, you know, breastfeeding moms are so glad they have fluoride because then it goes through the breast and then, you know, into the baby, and they're getting fluoride. I'm like, it's good for their gums.
Well, you really know what dentist said that?
The what?
You really had a dentist tell you that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. And then you know, the big stores sell fluoridated water that comes in a gallon or whatever. So it's interesting. My personal thoughts and you know, the research that I've done goes back to, and I know I've been on your show, so I'm not saying this a few times, but I know I've said it on a few other shows I've been on. It's a book that I've read, and it's called The Fluoride Deception. I know you've probably talked about it before, and it would be a great starter for many in your audience.
I actually haven't read that book, Jeff, so, you know, do tell them.
Yeah, I don't know the author of the book. I think it's $20 on Amazon, and you know, after I got interested in the Berkeys, I began to, you know, hear about water fluoridation, and I wasn't really aware of the effects of it. The book, you know, I came across it, like I said, about 3 years ago, and I've read through it. I haven't read it lately, but just some of the things that stuck out to me is just the history of fluoride. And a lot of people may have heard some of these things already, but the book explains more in detail. But, you know, after, I believe, Dr. Molyneux in the 1980s and 1990s, this doctor started finding out about how fluoride messes with your mind, or I believe it's neurologically what it does to your mind, or, you know, I'm not a techno-savvy guy, so take it with a grain of salt, words I use. But in essence, you know, just what it does to your body, your mind, and then also the history of fluoride. You know, back in the 1930s, 1940s, a lot of people were already sounding the alarm on fluoride, and for some reason, the powers that be here in the United States, without getting into names, and they're in the book. I mean, you can read the book, and really, you know, the industry that became, whether, you know, he strays away. The book I really like because he strays away maybe a lot of conspiracy theories, in the sense that, like, you know, he kind of goes as far as saying, okay, it could be related to the atom bomb and fluoride and how they had to cover it up because they needed it for the atom bomb. But he doesn't go too far, you know what I mean, and start extrapolating. But he brings up evidence, and so the book just outlines really the history of fluoride. And I just find it fascinating how the thing that blows my mind is how people tested it on their own children. And there's, you know, and they even live now, they're living today, or were interviewed by this gentleman, and how they actually thought it was a good thing and they didn't have any problem with it. But they were being gassed with fluoride. And so, you know, they were doing testings on people, they were doing things, and just the whole, I think ultimately, the whole cover-up of fluoride is what I have a big problem with, is just, the testing and everything that was done back then. All these people that I just find it to be a huge cover-up. That's the problem that I have with fluoride. I think there's a big cover-up. Anyway, go ahead.
Here's one of my big problems with it. If you go and you take a tube of toothpaste and you could manage to gag it down and eat an entire tube of toothpaste, it will very likely kill you dead. It will. Seriously will. At that concentration, that much fluoride. If you look on a tube of toothpaste, there's a warning on there that says basically if your kid gets a hold of this and eats more than the recommended amount for a topical application, call Poison Control Center immediately. So we've got something we know is toxic. And what we're saying is we can use moderate amount of toxicity to provide a health benefit, which is not unprecedented, not to be unfair. There's plenty of medications that save lives that if were given in larger doses would kill you, but putting that into our water just doesn't seem like a good idea. And then the crap they put in there is basically industrial waste that if they took it and took a bag of it and dumped it into a stream, the FTC or whoever, not the FTC, the EPA would come and put it under the jail, right? They would say this is a completely unacceptable practice, dumping this stuff into our rivers and streams, but we can drip it into the water supply, and then it goes out through our sewage system back into our water supply because the filtration and the process they do with the sewage treatment doesn't remove the fluoride, right? So it ends up in there anyway, plus it goes through our bodies first, and to me that just doesn't make any logistical sense, and it doesn't make any sense from a health standpoint. I don't want to turn the whole show into why fluoride sucks today, but, I do want to make a case to people that it makes sense to get it the heck out of your water, because if it's something that you took too much in, it would cause you to need a hospital and poison control, maybe you shouldn't be imbibing it on it every day.
Yeah, and really a lot of people have references and say we're being medicated without our permission, and
that too.
And
I think about it.
And just like he brings up in the book, something that's I think one of the glaring things is that a lot of the research on fluoride is 50 years old that they're basing it on. When the United States had a few, the population was minute compared to it is now. You know what I mean? Or was it? But I don't know. I just find it. I mean, there wasn't. There's still a lot of people. I don't know how many people lived in the 40s and 50s, but obviously the population at 300 or 400 million now is way more than it was back then. But just how they got it in the water, the deception of getting it in the water, and how it's carried on, and how the people are standing up to the system, of their local municipalities. And I'm happy for them. But how I think over time, fluoride really may show its effects. It's not something that you can have instant gratification. If you eat the whole bottle, or you're saying if you eat the whole toothpaste, you could die. That's instant gratification of something that can happen with fluoride. It's a process. Fluoridation or fluorosis of the teeth and everything. That's a process. It isn't something that happen overnight. So that's the thing that gets me is like it's something you can't really see. So it's kind of a silent, I don't want to say killer, but it's a silent, it can be hurting you silently, and you don't even know it. And so with the Berkeys, what they offer, what we offer, and if you have any type of system, and you have a home system, reverse osmosis, we didn't talk about necessarily, filtration systems, if you have that, if you have a gravity one, if you have reverse osmosis, if you have, something on your shower, do your best to have something that will reduce the fluoride. Fluoride can be very difficult to come out of the water, and when it's going into your body, there's also the evidence that it's not necessarily fluoride only. When they dump the fluoride in at the municipality level, and I don't know, Jack, you would agree with me, you've seen it online probably, is that it's heavy metals, arsenic, other things are in those bags, and it's coming from China sometimes.
Here's what happens. They have these places where they dump the stuff in, right? And they don't just go up into a big vat and dump it in there. It's kind of like a place the water goes through. It's like a mixing chamber that allows it to drip out at a certain concentration so that they end up with a yield in parts per million. This has to be measured because if they just screwed up and dumped like a truckload in one small reservoir, they basically would kill people, and they know it. So it has to be done at whatever their parts per million goal is. But in some of these mixing tanks, you have these videos you can see where this crap builds up in there. It looks almost like crystals growing or something. And the thing is that fluoride wouldn't do that. fluoride will dissolve in water like boom, right? So, okay, what are these carriers going along with it that are crystallizing in these vats, so to speak? And I saw one video, it's so long ago, I probably can't find it for the show notes, but it was a guy from a water municipality basically saying, I don't know what that is, but I don't think we should be putting it in the water.
No, I remember getting a call from, no, oh, go ahead, I don't interrupt you, sorry.
The bags of fluoride were coming in from China, and they said deadly poison on the bag. And I think the guy asked him something like, how do you feel like about dumping this stuff in there where it says deadly poison? And he was like, I have to. You know, it's my job. But that bugs me, and you know, I don't want to say, well, okay, well, they're doing this to take, you know, to eliminate us or something like that, or some kind of nonsense. But I do.
Yeah, I don't go there.
We have a problem with an industrial waste, and we've turned it into something we can sell to people as something good for their health, and it doesn't jive with me. It just doesn't.
No, and really, maybe to end off the fluoride, what I remember from the book especially was that they had a problem, and unfortunately, they decided to make the problem. They flipped it. You know, the lawyers flipped it. They made, by using, you know, propaganda and information back then in the 40s and 50s, they made fluoride, they advertised it as something delicious, and based on a couple tests, and then were able to get juries and really people back then to overturn people that were suing them.
Wow.
And so they were, you know, I don't know the ultimate agenda, you know, like you were saying, if they're trying to do bad things, but I do know there was manipulation in the book. It explains fully that all they had to do was really show a Crest toothpaste or Clorox toothpaste in the 1960s, and actually the defense folded. You know, the defense pretty much folded because there was nothing. They go, this is it. It's over. People are putting this. You know, it's a. You know, they couldn't they didn't feel they could get the jury to really believe their side of the story, and so that's really sad. And
it can't be bad for you. Put it in your toothpaste. You know, that type of thing. And I guess my final thing before we leave fluoride and go on to some other stuff is that, like, you have to think about how big the problem really would be for them if they couldn't put it in our water. What would they? Because since it does come as an industrial byproduct, since it is a toxin. Since the EPA wouldn't let you just dump it into a stream or a river or a landfill where there's any kind of runoff at all, and I want people to understand that if you buried bags of fluoride in a landfill and you were responsible for that landfill and the water began leaching out of the landfill and taking the fluoride with it into the groundwater, the EPA will put your ass under the jail. I mean, seriously, like that is like, you cannot do that. So what would we do with it all if we didn't feed it to people? And then, you know, I always say never attribute to malice that which you could explain through incompetence. But I guess the other side of that would be don't make malice complex. It doesn't have to be some big agenda to get rid of everybody. It could just be an agenda to take a really expensive problem and make it a very profitable solution and with no concern for how it harms people. Because it doesn't harm them. That's not that bad. It just messes them up. But they don't die. It'll be fine. It fixes their teeth, you know. Let's move on from there because we'll turn it into the anti-fluoride hour if we don't. But
I know. Good point.
There's a lot of stuff going on out there right now that's a threat to our water supply. Some interesting things that have happened lately that's been in the news locally for some people, nationally, I guess. You know, where things are, you know, it's not. Okay, now your water's never going to be good again, but for a time, like people having boil water advisories and things like that. We recently had really, really bad drought in the south, and a lot of the ground shifting burst water mains, and they were able to get pressure back up, but because of backflow, and I don't even understand exactly why, but basically they would say, okay, if you live in this area for the next week, you need to boil your water. And, you know, if you're using a Berkey, you're probably not that concerned. And, like, you know, when they tell you that, it's one thing. But sometimes, like, okay, there's a problem, and then, like, a week later they figure out there's a problem, and then they put out a boil water advisory. Well, what about the last 7 days worth of water? So, I mean, what are some of the things you've seen happen recently that have affected water supplies for people?
Yeah, I think one of the big ones, and obviously everybody, your audience, I know they're worldwide, and so it can depend on your locality and your state here in the United States. And, you know, so I'm going to pick certain states, but really they can be in all states in a sense. The water supply can be compromised at any time. And I mean, if you're on a well, you're obviously watching your own, but on the tap side, recently there was a big story about arsenic, the arsenic levels in Iowa. And Iowa, there's only a couple million people that live there, obviously, and they can come to any state. So I would, invite people who are listening to the show to read up on some of those articles. We have our blog. I know we haven't mentioned it yet, but at our website, we do have the Berkey Guy blog, and there we try to hit this story. We hit it about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I believe, about this story of arsenic in Iowa and how they were having high levels of arsenic. And, you just filter your water. I don't know if there's really any solution that they have other than just filter your water, get a filter that will remove the arsenic from the water. I mean, whether it be, like I said, RO or Berkey or whatever you have, just get something to be able to remove the arsenic from the water. There have been other boil water. I remember one in Massachusetts in the last couple of years had one. But really, it's like these things come out almost daily. I mean, you might have said that, but these in the news constantly, and it's not really brought up into the mainstream, but boil water alerts are constant. And they are kind of in locales. So, you're like, I live in Texas or I live in, Denver. I don't have those water alerts all the time. But, I remember, I guess, a personal story, and this is kind of a weird one. In the city that I used to live in, back about 6 years ago, had a boil water alert, and the whole city shut down. And this is kind of a weird story. I say the weird story again because it kind of caught everybody off guard. So they had, I think it was chloroform in the water or some contaminant in the water, and it shut down all the businesses. Everybody stopped for 2 days, and it was a big deal. And come to find out, the testing that had been done was incorrect. So while all the businesses and everything shut down, and I bring this up in the sense that it's good to need to have your water purified. We can't rely on even the cities to give us accurate testing. People could say there was a conspiracy in it. I would just say, you know what, the testing came back wrong, and it was error, and they missed it. But it set everybody on high alert, and for us, I didn't really care. You know what I mean? Because I knew the Berkeys removed that, and I can't remember exactly. It was chloroform or some kind of contaminant, and we didn't even care. So it was a non-issue for us. But, that could happen, even missed tests or arsenic or anything. And I'm not here to scare people. I just want, people to know that these things are in their water, and the city can sometimes get it wrong.
Yeah, you're making me think of a great one, dude. It doesn't even seem related to prepping when you first see it. My wife being a nurse, we watch a lot of the mystery diagnosis shows and stuff like that where people get sick. And there was this town up in Canada, and I don't remember if it was Mystery Diagnosis or a show similar to it, where a couple of people came in sick. They had these real bad diarrhea. Some of them were close to death. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with them. And then, the numbers started to escalate, and it looked like a pandemic thing on a prepper thing where, the hospital's overrun. Fortunately, it was a fairly small town, so while the hospital was overrun, it was still a fairly, they could get some outside help to come in and deal with it, but these people were almost dead. So somebody snaps to, maybe there's something wrong with the water. Well, they test the water, nothing in the water. They still can't figure out what the people have. Some of the people recover. I think a couple people die, but most of the people end up recovering. It looks like it's going to go away. People start getting sick again. Well, now the only common link is the water, so they go test the water again. The water's clean. There's nothing in the water. And finally, some guy just at the thing got sharp to it and said, I'm going to test the water every day for a month. And I don't remember exactly how it was working, but there was some type of plume affected by rainfall washing some type of cryptosporidium derivative or, some version of that or something into the water, and it would come through basically like a cloud. And by the time people would get sick and they would test for it, it was already gone. But then they get another major rainfall event, and it would come through again. And until they even knew what it was, there wasn't really anything they could do about it because they didn't know what they were dealing with. And that's just another example. That's not malice. That's not even who could have possibly figured, if it wasn't for this one dude, who probably saved a lot of people in this town, snapping to, okay, this could be an intermittent issue, and you get sick from water. Usually you're sick 48 hours after you drank it. And if you present to a hospital, you're probably 24 to 48 hours into your illness. So you're 4 days away from when you consume the water. You test the water then, it could very well be gone. And anybody that would have been using good water filtration would have probably been largely unaffected by this in that one particular town. That's, if you hadn't brought up what you just did, I would have never even remembered that. That was so long ago we watched that show.
Oh my God. And it's not, that, it's to scare or anything, and I don't mean that by any means, but it's just, our water supply really, and even though, and they add chloramine to water, they have the chlorine or chloramine or doing the fluoride, or, it's just a lot of times, we need to have a contingency plan for where we would go or what we would do in an emergency, or even if there's not an emergency, have something to really take these things out of our water. I know the big difference, between taking showers with, chlorine or going to a restaurant with chlorine. It's just nasty. I despise drinking water. You can almost smell it as you drink it. And I know hopefully a lot of your listeners can relate to that municipalities they're in. But it's just like, and that's going into your body, and almost like sometimes soda or juice masquerade that. It's like, the sugar will take that away, and we're still drinking the fluoride. And, it's hard to eliminate all these things from our world. There's no doubt. It's almost like it's inevitable that we're going to take some of this.
I look at it this way, like, okay, so you get a smoker, right? And you're like, dude, you stink. Your clothes stink. Your car stinks. Your house stinks. Everything about you stinks. And they're like, I don't smell nothing. Right? Well, that's because they smoke every day, right? So if you drink chlorinated water every day, it doesn't stink to you. It doesn't have an off flavor to you. It tastes fine. If you go and drink, and I don't even care if you don't filter it, if you just want to experiment yourself to see what it's like, if you for, let's say, a month drank nothing but bottled water that was to make sure it doesn't have any chlorine in it, and then you pick up a glass of tap water from the municipality and drink it, you will not, after a day you wouldn't really notice. You'll notice that the bottled water tastes a little bit differently, but you wouldn't really notice the tap water being off or anything. After a month of that, being on a well and having your system for a couple of years before that, I can't drink water from a regular tap without going, ugh. I'll do it. If I'm thirsty and that's all it's around, I'm not going to die from it. I'll drink it. I'm not some kind of purist or whatever, but I can't drink it without going, this just doesn't taste right. And then you want arsenic and fluoride. I think a lot of people don't really understand with those two. Unlike a lot of things like clyptosporidium or Girardi or whatever, we can boil those away. You boil fluorinated water, you just create steam and get more concentrated fluoride. You boil arsenic water, I think you get the same thing, don't you? More concentrated arsenic?
I'm not sure it's a good point. I know, I encourage people to boil their water, obviously they don't know the fluoride content, but to boil it, it's like, why would you put chlorine in your water? You kill the bacteria, but have something to remove it. Have something to remove the chlorine from the water before you drink it. Don't just drink that boiled water is kind of how I've looked at it. It can be part of, like, people have purification pills. They have, a bottle of water that can purify, like a sport Berkey or something like that. Just have something to remove that, crap from the water, in other words. It's bad. I don't
I looked up the arsenic thing because I didn't know. Boiling arsenic apparently does not remove it just by boiling it, but distillation does. So you either filter or distill to get rid of it. That's what I'm getting, and it's one website, so if I'm wrong, folks, don't rake me or anything. I just filter the crap out so I don't have to worry about it. So, but I mean, there are a lot of things that we've heard in the news lately about things getting into the water supply. Like you said, whether it's buried or ignored or just they screwed up and didn't test for it. There was recently reports of chromium, some type of chromium isotope or something in people's water. There were reports, I think, last year about radioactivity levels of water throughout, like, the Texas Gulf Coast area. And, I mean, have you heard anything else that's kind of that level, that big, going on recently?
Yeah, like around the Fukushima earthquake in March, you bring up a good point. A lot of things happen, especially in the water purification, business or industry, a lot of people, I think, have taken advantage of what happened. I mean, I heard about the radioactive materials getting in water, possibly. I think uranium's a big one that's spiked up a little bit now, or things related to the earthquake over there in Japan with radioactive material. And so then everybody comes out with, I mean, what we do, I don't talk about, it being removed, but then everybody under the sun's like, oh, mine removes radioactive materials, because as soon as this is all over, I will leave that on my website, and I have no testing done, It just goes to show anybody will say anything, and so you have to be careful with testing. And so I think while it's a concern, I've heard a couple different theories related to radioactive materials. One of the theories happens to be that radioactive materials latch onto sediment. So if you have a sediment material, let's just say a twig or something or whatever, if you have something in your water and it will attach itself to it, so if you can remove that material from the water, then it actually won't go through the filters. It'll attach to it and everything. That's one theory. But anybody who makes a claim that it removes radioactive materials, any system, I mean, I'd like to know the lab that's doing the testing. I mean, I'm hard pressed to say. You can make general statements, I guess, but it's more like a marketing term than really, do I actually have the testing? So I think, you mentioned chromium and that contaminant, and I think that one is spikes up in the water from time to time. But, from what I've seen, all these situations, whether it be, I remember hearing a story about anthrax in 2002, like people were touting how their systems remove anthrax, but there was no testing done, so that's why my cautiousness is just, those can be in the water. It's just be careful of anybody, using that as a manipulation to get you to buy something, is what I usually kind of lay low, because that's kind of a cycle. It's gone through a cycle. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I completely agree.
Always in the water.
I completely agree, especially on the Fukushima stuff. If you are really worried about radiation for Fukushima, fine, you could be worried about radiation for Fukushima. Whatever your worry list is, I want you to move it to the bottom of your worry list. That's all I could say for us here in America. If you're in Japan or in the state of Japan, or you eat a lot of fish from there or something, maybe we could talk. But for day-to-day life here, but I'm just kind of talking about the fact that stuff pops up all the time that, we normally just think wouldn't be a problem. What I was referring to in Texas had zero to do with Fukushima or any kind of a nuclear accident. It had to do with naturally occurring radiation, and I think it has something to do with you were talking about being picked up as particulate, attaching itself to particulates in groundwater. And
it's probably better to say that, yeah.
Yeah, and what the one guy I listened to on it said was basically a lot of these particles are fairly benign in their natural state, but when you drink them and then they're inside your body, that they can do a lot of cellular damage. So I really don't know if that particular concern was overblown or overhyped. But what it does tell me is when they say, don't worry about your water, it's all fine the way that it is, I think they believe that, but I don't think that they can really know that 24/7, 365 the way they'd want us to believe that they can. And it's not even a malicious thing. It's just, it's absolutely impossible that you've tested all of the 3 trillion gallons of water that you pumped into Dallas-Fort Worth in the last 6 months. It can't be done.
Yeah, we were, and there is a sense of I rely on, the tap water for some things. We can't do it all. We really, the world we live in, there's some practicality to it. Like I have to rely on some systems, and I have to either purify the water or, that's all I wanted to say was just, it's hard to be, I don't want people to come away from this interview like, oh my gosh, my water and all this stuff, I gotta get it.
Yeah.
To be really, to make that a part of your prep, but also to make that a part of your daily life, really. I think, your slogan that you say, your tagline, in other words, I'm gonna botch it, but you'll say, you can say it, for emergency or for, even if there's not.
Live a better life if times get tough, or even if they don't.
Yeah, so go ahead.
That's it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would say, just live that better life by having, whether it be pure water. I think people are getting more conscious of the food that they eat and things like that. And so even if you don't have an imminent disaster or, right now there's not much I don't see a lot of turmoil going on in the United States with natural disasters or anything like that. There might be storms coming and going, but having that to live that better life, maybe even if you remove that fluoride or that chlorine now, it'll help you live that better life when you get into your 60s and 70s. You know.
I completely agree with that.
So that's why, not just for the emergency factor.
The thing I wanted to ask you about, Jeff, was that because I get questions on this, and I always kind of like go, you can, put too much effort into anything if you want to, but you brought it up, so I want your thoughts on this. Should people be concerned, or is there products, or do you even have a product on your site that would help people with the water that they're bathing with? Because I mean, obviously, I'm not going to go put 50 gallons through my Berkey and then put it in a thing and then take a shower with that. So is that a legitimate concern? Because the skin is the largest organ, and a lot of things that are in water get absorbed by the skin. So is there a product you recommend for that, or a product that you have for that?
No, I've got actually a little funny story for you, and I'll make it quick. Just a side one that just came up. My cousin is right now doing some missionary work over in Tonga. And so water is not prevalent. They actually don't have any water or soap, really. They have water a little bit, but he's actually was using to clean his body during a shower. He was using toothpaste. He's like, I get clean and minty, and it was funny. And I bring that up because, oh gosh, what was my train of thought on that? I bring that up because in situations like whether it be in Tonga or whether it be in the United States, you don't have to have, like we right now do 65 gallons. Every time you get in the shower, you're using like 50 to 65 gallons to take a shower. If you spend 10, 20 minutes in the shower. So for him, it was like, I'm going to use toothpaste and just a little bit of water. So you can use a Berkey to shower, per se, if you were to have maybe a gallon or two, you can bathe a little bit. I do know about shower filters that we offer. They're just plain and simple. You can have a shower filter. There's other pump systems where you can have an off-grid pump system and then pump it through, pump it through and then into like a head system and make your own outhouse, or your own pump system, whether it be hand pump or whatever, to be able to just use a few gallons. I mean, I think, we use right now, like I said, 50 to 65 gallons in one shower. And really, if you're going to take a shower, in an emergency or even in the woods, you're only going to use a few gallons, or you go to a stream, and use that water, or you can purify it. So I don't have a lot of options for bathing, but I think that, if you needed to bathe yourself, you definitely would downgrade from that 50 to 60 gallons.
But do you have, like, what I'm saying is, do you on your site, do you sell a filter that is for filtering bathing water, like for your shower?
We do. It's called the KDF shower filter. I do personally use it. It's not the best one on the market. It's around $40 currently, and I know this interview will be heard years from now. But it's a basic one, removal of chlorine, and it's difficult because you're trying to remove everything when it's hot and cold. So it sits on your shower, and it can do. So
there's a physical limitation because I'm having to filter the water on demand. I really didn't think of that, but it makes perfect sense because, like, if I go fill up my Berkey, and I think it's like 4.5 gallons roughly that ours holds, it's a significant amount of time before it filters from the top chamber to the bottom chamber, all of it for use. Where with a shower, I'm trying to force 40, 50 gallons of water through there in 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
Yeah, and it's hot and cold. It can range. So. Like in an emergency situation, you might just use a few gallons. You could use Berkey water to bathe, but in a normal daily situation, when times are not tough, like we have that basic solution. I know if you go around, there's a lot of different companies that sell shower filter units. I don't know any that remove fluoride from the water. But I do know that a lot of them are good at removing chlorine, and
I think that's for bathing. To me, that's the big one because my concern always with chlorine is that it's most toxic as a gas in its gaseous state. And if you've ever experienced CS gas, it sucks. It really, really, really sucks. And when you're in a shower, you're atomizing that water. You're breathing it in as well.
And you're not going to fall over and die. I mean, I think you and I are in agreement. We don't want to scare people, but my view is that, like, there's millions of little different things that affect our health in a negative way every single day. And we can probably only address maybe 1,000 of them over our lifetime. We'll figure out to put systems in place. One little thing I can do today, one little thing I can do next week, one little thing I can do after that. But if we take the cumulative effect of all those things that we take off of our body's stress factors, and we start with the easy ones, like screw this thing on your shower and don't breathe chlorine, when you take a shower every day. And for some people that, work certain jobs, you take 2 showers a day, and you're breathing that stuff in. And maybe it won't have like this dramatic, huge, you're going to be super and well forever and it cures cancer or whatever, right? But it's that one little tiny thing on your health. Well, then start growing some of your own food. Then filter the water that you drink. Then do this other little thing over here. Then take a walk once or twice a day, or at least 3 times a week, or something like that. And then it's not, coral calcium makes you, super indestructible. It's that these little things, like you say, by the time you're 60 and 70, those cumulative effects have either worked for you or against you, depending on how you've channeled them.
Yeah, and oh gosh, what came to my mind was just like, I know you have a lot of great ideas, and we might have some, and I just want, people to know too, is like, feel free to, I know there's a little forum or a chat there, you can make comments and just, kind of, talk about some of the things that you're doing. I know we all have different situations, and so, especially if you live on a well or you live down, that can be a big difference. And so any stories relating to water or water purification or just anything in general relating to water, your water preps or what you're doing, I mean, we'd love to hear about it. I would. I could always get other ideas. We're giving out ideas. I'm like, I'd love to hear what people have to say also, in other words, what they're doing, because that helps me. I mean, that's what I've learned from the people that I've dealt with for the last 6.5 years, is what their ideas have been. It's been really important to me to help shape the way that I live now,
Well, definitely. And I mean, we will have the show notes up, and there'll be a place where people can comment like that. You also have your blog where people can connect with you, and you have a board on our forum. There's a Berkey Guy forum at the Survival Podcast forum, and I'm sure Jeff would be happy to answer anything you've got there. As far as systems, I know I've seen you run like in cycles where like you're like, we have lots of them, come get them, they're here, and then like go, I'm sorry, like a big glut came in and we're on a shortage right now, and you can get the little bitty one or just the giant one and there's like 2 of them, oh, now they're gone, and then we have lots of them again. Where are we at that cycle right now? If people are wanting to add a Berkey to their preps, how is the supply situation today?
Oh no, good question. That happened for about the last, from March to about maybe September or October. Things have been getting better. Things are pretty much, all available now with the Berkey products. Things were crazy, during.
I mean, Fukushima almost killed you, didn't it? Yeah, it's like everybody decided, like, I even sent you like one guy that's like not a listener to the show. He's just a business partner of mine from the past, who would like never even worry about this stuff. And he called me, where do I get a water filter? I'm like, okay, I'll send you to Jeff. You're like, dude, I'm not giving any special deals. I'm like, I don't want you to give him a special deal. I just want you to give him sell him a system and get him to shut up. And
no. And it was crazy. It was just berserk. And, it's hard to gauge those things. You have what you can carry, or what they even, the main Berkey company will carry, or any products. I mean, we had problems with our wife's food storage, and we had problems with some of the other products that we carry. We just saw everybody was selling out everywhere, and so everything's fine now. I mean, I really want to give, what my thing would be. I haven't never been on an interview with you before. As we said earlier, is just give a really big, huge thanks to those who are member support brigade, or members in the support brigade, who have ordered from us, and I see all of your orders, and I just really appreciate a lot of you are within your benefits page, and they can get a free Sport Berkey with their order over in $99 or $100, and I'm just thankful. There have been hundreds, if not over 1,000 people over the last 2.5 years that have ordered from us, and then we've given them, we must have given out well over 1,000 Sport Berkey water bottles, and I'm just thankful because a lot of people don't see it, and maybe, obviously I want to say thank you genuinely, but also if you haven't, I would encourage you. I think that what Jack offers for the benefits, and I know he didn't expect me to give this what I'm about to say, but it really is a lot for what he does for the member support brigade. I think he adds new things, but even getting that support Berkey, I mean, people are paying literally daily $25 a day for one of those bottles, and it's amazing that we're Jack and what he has going on, and he does give not just say, I give you value, and I know that he does give it. So I know it's a real thank you to all the people that are in the member support brigade, but that's available. And also, the forum, I respond to everything that I can on there and really try to give genuine answers on Jack's forum as soon as I can.
Well, let me say this on the forum. I'm sitting on the forum right now. I'm looking at every sponsor that I've given a board to. I see in your forum 930 posts. I see in my member support brigade forum 735 posts, so you're beating me out on feedback on the forum. And the next closest person is 170. So, folks, that tells you how involved and engaged Jeff is with you guys and how willing he is to answer stuff. And that's basically blowing any three of the others away. And I'm not saying anything bad on their product. I'm just saying as far as willingness to engage on the forum, it's very, very high. And having you on, I appreciate the opportunity to tell you publicly what I say often, when I mention you is you've been just a diehard supporter of the show. You've always taken care of my listeners, no matter what it's taken. So we appreciate you, not just as a sponsor, but for the extra mile that you've always gone to make sure that you take care of people. And that's why I say you can get a Berkey from a lot of different people, but not just because he's our sponsor, but because, it's the smart thing to do is deal with who's going to take care of you. That's why I'm so happy to always endorse you.
No, and the forum, it's pretty much taken off. I think with 900, I know I saw it too recently, and I'm like, glad to connect with people there and just help people. That's what I've learned, and my friend and I, one of my good friends and I, we see people in what they're doing in preparedness, and they don't realize how important the relationships that I have with the people that your listeners, the people that listen to the show with you, how important those relationships are, and put that ahead of your other interests. And I think it's really been, people can tell your genuineness, I think, in that whether you're doing things, disingenuous or genuinely. And so I just appreciate that the people that I deal with, with you, Jack, and obviously with the listeners and people that listen to the show, I've never been able to publicly thank them, but I know a lot of you, I just want to say to all of you, and sometimes, I try to respond to all your emails and, to say thank you for taking advantage of the offerings that what Jack does, with his member support brigade and those that do order. I see pretty much all that goes on, and I do appreciate it. So, but I've never been able to say it on your show, so I have the time to say
well,
it. So that's kind of why I'm long-winded.
No, I appreciate it, and definitely are genuine. One thing I'd like to talk about real quick before we wrap up here, though, because I think you, like a lot of suppliers in this industry, see it, and it's so obvious to you, and I think a lot of people don't realize how behind the eight ball they can get. It wasn't just Fukushima. I think you'd probably say that these cycles of not being able to keep up happen every time there's a major disaster. That people, and some have a bigger effect than others, but, I mean, the underlying message there is get your stuff when nothing's going on, because that's when there's lots of it available and there's sales and good deals, because no supplier is going to put stuff on sale when they can't even keep it in stock.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just common sense business. In fact, you're at a point where you're going, please stop ordering. I can't, even if you stop stock, you're a certain size company. You could only fill so many orders a day before all of you want to put a 44 to your head, right? So, I mean, you've probably seen that in just about every major disaster since you've been in this business. When those things happen, things go in short supply.
No, and I recently, just in the last day or two, saw a spike in Greece and in France. For some reason yesterday or the day before, people in that area of the world, I don't know why, wanted the product that was very, very popular, which is potassium iodate, and that was just huge. And the last few days has been big, and it goes in cycles. I totally agree with you. And then everybody can't get everything all at once, or everything takes time to get. There's things that I still need to get personally in my preps to be better prepared. And so, you're right. I mean, it's, I don't know what will happen in 2012 in disasters, but I would, like you're saying, just encourage people to, whether it be a water purifier or whether food or whatever. Just have something on hand, and obviously use your preps. Use the things that you're learn how to use them, or eat them if they're food storage. I think it's amazing. I'd never seen it before, but in March this year, I finally was able to see what happens when there's something like that happening, like Fukushima.
Yeah,
and it is unprecedented. Unprecedented. I can't even imagine. What would happen the next time,
And I think it shows the level of unpreparedness that's out there, and that's what I think people need to realize is that when people feel exposed, they have a tendency to hoard, they have a tendency to freak out, they have a tendency to do something really dumb like pay $150 for a bottle of potassium iodate on eBay or something like that. But the people that are prepared, they don't do those dumb things. Well, Jeff, it's been a great interview. And I say it all the time when I mention you on the show, but you get to do it today. Where can people learn more about the stuff that you have to offer, find your blog, all that good stuff?
I know, thanks to Mel Jack for having me on. Our website, there's two different ways to get there, really. I like to go with the first one because it's easier to remember. Yeah, goberkey.com, GOBERKEY.com. That'll get you to our website, which is Directive 21, and I know we didn't, Directive21.com, and we didn't go into what that means, but and where that came from. But if you go onto our website, you can go to our products page or our accessories page and look at what we have to offer. We do, our bread and butter, and what I, personally love is our Berkey water filters, but we also have other prep items and our emergency seed banks. But you can also go on that page and find our blog and join our RSS feed, and we have a few dozen people on it, and I'm just excited to be able to connect in that way where we can write information up and it's just free information, and whether it be new products we carry, whether it be news stories related to water or preps or just things going on in the world, good prepping ideas have really where a few thousand people will listen to or will read the blog, and we're really appreciative of that. So yeah, that's how you can reach us. You can call us. Also, I won't say the number, but
no, go ahead.
That's how you can reach us. Oh, okay. You can call us at 877-886-3653, and we're here to help. I mean, that's and really to build long-term relationships with people. That's my idea, is that I want to be doing this long-term, and that's what I appreciate. I think people see that. It's not just at the moment, and not just Fukushima. It's, our company is called, just so people know, it's called LPC Survival, and our little tagline is helping you prepare while time is on your side. And
awesome.
And I hope people will prove, and I know your listeners honestly have been, and the people, like I said, I thank you guys a lot, the listeners of the show. You guys are some of the best people that we deal with, and I'm not just saying that. Jack knows offline that I've mentioned that to him. So
every single time, folks, every single time I talk to him, that's what I hear. Well, Jeff, I appreciate you being with us today. Thank you very much for that, and we'll wrap up now. And folks, again, I mean, it almost goes without saying at this point, but if you're wondering what to do for your water filtration needs, I'm going to tell you use what I have, which is a Berkey, and I'm going to tell you to deal with our guest today, Jeff Gleason, the Berkey Guy. Who else would you go to for a Berkey other than a Berkey Guy? And with that, this has been Jack Spirko today, along with the Berkey Guy, helping you figure out how to live that better life if times get tough, or even if they don't.
Well, thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Survival Podcast Friday Flashbacks. If you enjoyed today's show, please consider becoming an MSB member. Just go to thesurvivalpodcast.com and click on members to learn more. You can also support our show by going to TSPAZ, that's TSPAZ, tspaz.com. Anytime you shop online, and while you'll support us no matter what you buy, you will find over 500 reviews of items I have personally tested and vouched for. And to stay in touch with us and never miss anything, follow our channel or our group on Telegram. You can find links to that and all our social media options. Just go to thesurvivalpodcast.com and check the show notes for any episode.
Revolution.